You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit.
Before we get to the show, we have a partner for this episode. We're going to get you a deal on kettlebells. GreatLakesGearya.com. And for our American friends, us.greatlakesgearya.com. And they make great quality kettlebells at great prices. The handles are awesome. If you ever used kettlebells before, you know how important that is. And if you go to checkout and use the code LIVEWILD, you'll save 5%. And that's a big deal because right now a lot of places don't even have any kettlebells. These guys have them coming out their ears. They're happy to ship them to you. Great guys to deal with. And in addition to the kettlebells, they've got all sorts of other fitness equipment, including barbells, dumbbells, weighted maces, all the fun stuff. So go to greatlakesgearya.com, promo code LIVEWILD, and save yourself 5%. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Live Wild Radio. I'm Winston. This is going to be another one of those question and answer kind of episodes. Works out pretty well because Catherine is so busy with work that she doesn't have time to record anything anyway. But we will get back to some team episodes. We've got some ideas coming up shortly. But since I started doing these like fitness and lifestyle and what have you, Q&As where people send in their questions and I give them, my answer to the best of my abilities. I've found more and more questions coming in, which is pretty cool. And it kind of actually plays to one of the things we're going to talk about today. So obviously anybody that, saw the episode name title, today we are going to talk about how I manage depression without medication. I've used medication before. I would rather be depressed than on medication, like just how I feel. Not sort of my judgment call on the medication. It's just how the medication makes me feel. I've tried a number of SSRIs, anti-depression medications. And I lose my personality, flatlined, kind of feel like a zombie, no libido, and so when you don't care about sex anymore, it kind of adds to your depression in a way. That is what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things we will talk about is how exercise actually adds a mood stabilizer. Mood moderator, and that makes a perfect segue, like I'm a damn professional, into our sponsor this episode, which is Great Lakes Gearya. It's where we get all of our fitness equipment. So great thing, if you've listened to any of our fitness episodes, you know how big of fans we are of kettlebells. Because it's not the vid I tested. I just got a little tickle. But Great Lakes Gearya is basically the source for pretty much all of our fitness equipment. Kettlebells, got some dumbbells, pull-up bar. Really the only thing that we didn't get from them is our flooring, our horse stall mats, gymnastics rings, and ab wheel. So if you go there, greatlakesgearya.com, you'll see basically they've got the widest selection of hardstyle kettlebells, basically from 8 pounds, or I think maybe even 6, all the way up to 200-pound kettlebells, which, is kind of ridiculous, but they got them. And their pull-up bar is fabulous. Obviously, you'll have to, lag it to your wall, so you have to find studs and put in backing boards and all that kind of jazz. But it's a commercial quality pull-up bar. It's the monkey bar style, so there's multiple hand positions. I love it. Catherine loves it. any of our friends that come over and work out with us, they love it in a kind of sick and twisted way, because obviously pull-ups and leg raises and hangs and all that type of thing is hard work. But yeah, so if you go to greatlakesgeria.com and use promo code LIVEWILD, one word, you will save 5%, and basically get started. The best time to have started a fitness program was yesterday, and the next best time is today, right? Like it takes consistency over time to make any progress. And so the sooner you start, the sooner you will start making progress. And if you want to, transform your life, transform yourself, it's a long-term process. Nothing to do with Great Lakes Geria, but more just the philosophy of training. The idea that, there's like a 6-week program for your abs, and you'll see your abs. Bullshit. Unless your abs are already there, 6 weeks isn't going to do it for you. Especially if you're coming from an untrained state. Most of those programs will just make you miserable because they have you doing too much too soon, and you will hurt all the time. So, greatlakesgeria.com, promo code LIVEWILD. Get started on your fitness journey. So, today's episode question. Somebody basically harkened back to the mental health episode we did with Alyssa and Eric way back when. And I'd mentioned about sort of managing my depression without medication. And basically a few people actually have asked me to elaborate on that. How do you do it? So I will put the disclaimer out. I am not a doctor. I am not a health professional. This is just what I have done that has worked for me. So I'm just sharing my personal experience combined with a bit of science and research. And, it's one of those things where if you're somebody suffering from depression, anxiety, you may not do everything that I do myself, but, you'll run into the thing where potentially adding some of the things, the practices, you may find help. So, sort of like the disclaimer that goes before, any fitness program, check with your doctor first. I'd say our lawyers told us to put that in, but we don't have any lawyers. So I break it down into 3 components. There is the actions. So it's the things I do that like physically do that help manage, basically my brain. There is the social aspect, and then there is diet and supplementation, if that makes any sense. So, on the doing side of it, the action side, number 1 is daily exercise. It doesn't have to be some crazy program, although the programming part of it, having a routine, right, where it's like, okay, you look on your sheet, right, or your spreadsheet, or however you want to track your programs, and here's what I'm doing today. I find creating a routine is a highly effective way of doing it, even when you don't feel like doing it. So daily exercise, whether that's strength training, which I recommend at least 3 days a week, doesn't have to be some crazy bodybuilding program or anything like that, but it's just progressively getting a little bit stronger at the foundational movement patterns of squatting, hip hinging, which is like deadlifting and swinging, pushing, could be push-ups, pulling, which could be pull-ups, or rowing, or, there's all sorts of pulls, and then loaded carries. You get stronger at all 5 of those movement patterns, your whole body will get stronger, you'll look better, blah, 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 blah. But it also will improve, like strength training improves a number of metabolic factors, which One of the things that we run into, and this is where it's sort of like not completely understood, but strength training improves insulin sensitivity, and high levels of insulin lead to whole body or systemic inflammation. And basically, there's some hypothesis that systemic inflammation, because your brain is part of the system, can lead to basically mental illness, depression, anxiety, that type of thing. So basically, strength training will improve that, insulin sensitivity, which can potentially bring down sort of the inflammatory effects of insulin. Because we need it, but it's just, we tend to be, if you're not active enough and you have a diet too high in carbohydrates, there's just too much insulin too often. Everything in life is about balance, right? Secondly, regular aerobic activity, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, has been shown to basically ameliorate a lot of the effects or symptoms of depression, and I can testify to that. So that combination of each week I try to get 3 to 4 strength training workouts in and 3 to 4, cardio sessions, and I walk every day. Conveniently, my job leads to 12 to 15,000 steps a day, even if I don't do anything else. Plus, I ride my bike to work. So all of that just adds up without it being working out, if you want to put it that way. For people who work in an office who don't have those options, you have to make a concerted effort, like go for a walk on lunch, go for like a 10-minute walk after each meal. Things like that. You just need to add to your movement practice so that you're just moving more. Humans are not meant to be static. Then that's sort of the exercise component of it. Then one of the most important things is sleep. Most people don't get enough sleep and they don't sleep well. So one of the things we need to do is have like sleep habits. Electronics get shut off an hour before bed. Basically, roughly an hour before bed, taking about 500 milligrams of magnesium, because most people in North America, 58% of the last study I read, are deficient in magnesium. And in addition to helping the body relax and therefore help you sleep better, magnesium is involved in a couple hundred other chemical processes in the body. So if you are, maybe say muscle cramps or something that stand out for you because you kind of notice those, well, there's also all of these other processes that are deficient because you're deficient in magnesium. So that kind of is quite important. But we'll get to that, when we talk about the nutrition side of it. But getting sleep habits, cool room, dark, quiet, you want to down-regulate when you go to bed, getting that 8-hour sleep. Even if it's not perfect, but, getting a little bit more sleep so you are actually rested. It's hard to approach the world with any kind of gusto and overcome kind of your challenges when you're just chronically fatigued. When we're not talking like chronic fatigue syndrome, what we're talking about is just being sleep deficient. Because they've done studies on this, and when people are sleep deficient, metabolically you go to hell, like your body responds like you're pre-diabetic, even, that's one bad night of sleep. So imagine chronically not getting enough sleep. The cumulative health effects are going to build up over time. And while people might think of them in terms of metabolic effects like insulin levels and insulin sensitivity and, testosterone levels and all these things that can be affected by poor sleep, your neurotransmitters regenerate when you're sleeping as well. Your brain recharges when you're sleeping. So if you're not getting enough sleeping, your brain ain't recharging properly either. So improving your sleep, like using a sleep tracker, like any of the fancy watches, getting that and instituting like one change at a time and tracking it for a couple of weeks and seeing how you can improve the quality and length of your sleep really can go a long way as far as improving your sort of mental health. And then my sort of third action thing is writing. And I'm not talking writing articles or books, but it's actually the way the human brain is wired. We focus on the negative because something good happens to you. You don't remember it that well because it ain't going to kill you. But we really do focus on the bad things because we want to avoid pain, right? But the problem is that then because our brain remembers the bad better than it remembers the good, it's very easy to get to a point where you just think everything's bad, right? Which is not good for your mental health. So one of the things that I found was highly effective is actually journaling each day and writing down what has gone well for you. You know, and this is like Alyssa, our friend, she's got the win journal. And literally that's what you're doing. You're writing down your wins. And you'd be amazed how that changes your mental state. Being able to look through, and if you're having a bad day, look back through your journal and see all of the good things that have happened. And that, for me, sometimes could be enough just to snap me out of it, right? Because it just reframes the world. You know, because we think of ourselves as like living in a reality, but we're living in our own perceptions, right? It's basically how we perceive the world. One person is super happy, exact same circumstance as you. They're happy. Another person in the exact same circumstance is miserable, right? But the exact same thing's happening to both of you. So that has to do with how we perceive the world. And we have some control over how we perceive the world. So by building that in, that practice of both gratitude for things that have gone well and just documenting it so that you're seeing that actually more things are going well for you than wrong. Or if a lot of things are going wrong, right, you don't have a lot of wins, well, that tells you get your shit together. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, that's been a number of times where it was like, oh, the problem is me, right? I look and it's like not a lot of wins, but I'm aware of all the losses. And it's like, what's the common denominator? Me. And then it makes me cognizant of like then starting an action plan forward to change those things, right? You know, but a lot of times our memory, especially when it comes to things that make us feel, are faulty. You know, if you look at witness testimony, it's notoriously, like in court, notoriously erroneous, you know, because the human brain sort of makes up its own, fills in the gaps, and it doesn't always fill them in with good stuff. So that process of writing down the things that have gone well, the wins, the successes, whatever, so that you're able to be aware of them and not just fixate on the negative things, I find terribly effective. Then the second part of my program for myself is the social. And some of it can be like pretty mercenary in the sense that my first thing was really focusing on cutting out toxic people out of my life. You know, when you're dealing with depression and mental illness already, having people who don't want the best for you, they one-up you, they put you down, they don't take your concerns and challenges seriously, that makes it very difficult because it's almost like you get gaslit into, oh wait, I feel like shit, but I don't have a you know, it's like, oh, it's just me. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that way that can go into it. So it's like looking through and it's like, if you're and this can be friends, this can be family. Reduce your exposure to toxic people, right? Just as you should reduce your exposure to toxic chemicals. You know, effectively toxic people create toxic chemicals in your brain, if that makes any sense. You know, we always say the poison's in the dose. Keep that dose low. And a lot of times, you know, when you sort of reduce contact or cut off contact with people who aren't good for you, there's almost like an immediate, you know, rise, you know, in your outlook and mood, because you're just not being surrounded by negativity. And then more importantly is surround yourself with people who want the best for you, right? Who, when something goes well, they celebrate your success. They will be honest with you. They will call you on your bullshit, you know, but they will also be there to drag you up out of the mud. And it's that kind of thing of reducing the toxicity and increasing the positivity. You will find that makes a massive difference. And it's not easy, you know, but, you know, if things were easy, you wouldn't be listening to how to, you know, how does Winston manage, you know, his depression and mental illness without drugs. And then one of the other big parts, and this sort of fits in with sort of the actions in the social. I've never figured out exactly where to categorize it, but find your purpose. You'd be amazed if you've got a purpose, if you've got, you know, if you want to call it a calling, then you'd be amazed what that can pull you through. And it really becomes one of those things where, like, for me, you know, if I had to sum it up into one thing, it's teaching. You know, so whether it's at work and I'm educating people about, you know, whether it's the right type of bicycle or how to pack for a camping trip or, you know, great places to go or, you know, what you really should be afraid of in the woods from you know, and it's not bears. You know, whether it's that type of thing, whether it's helping people on fitness journeys, whether it's this type of thing, that really puts me, having something that I'm having an effect on other people in a positive way. When things aren't going well for me, I find that can carry me through, right? And everybody's got to find their purpose, right? And I think one of the things for a lot of people that makes things tough is they just don't have a purpose. Like, they don't, you know, if things feel meaningless because you don't have meaning, then if you can find that thing, right? And again, we're not talking easy stuff. Like, this is a 30-year process for me. Then you will find that you have another gear, right, that get you out of the mud, so to speak. Because a lot of times in the deepest parts of depression, it feels like I'm stuck in the mud, right? I'm sinking in quicksand. So that's why I use that analogy a lot. And if you can add in, right, basically whether it's some volunteer work, whether it's something that gives back. You know, one of the biggest things for me, or not biggest, but one of the ongoing things for me, because of the way that I got into rock climbing, where it was just some guys going, "Hey kid, you want to try this?" You know, when I was out at the Craigs, you know, as a 14-year-old. Well, I never would have been able to, you know, have all the adventures climbing that I've had in my life. It wasn't for those guys going, "Hey, give it a try," right? And teaching me. So now I've been paying it forward, you know, so I regularly take people out. I instruct, I show them, you know, I might be the gateway, you know, taking people out for the first time. I might be helping people improve some stuff, but it's that ongoing thing of like, people helped me, so I'm trying to help people, you know, and pay it forward. And it's the same thing. Like, the number of like fitness programs, even though, this is something I do as a business, the number of fitness programs I've put together for people over the years that I didn't charge anything for. Like, they weren't in a position to pay my fees, but I just wanted them to be able to be better. I wanted them to be on a path, because that's meaningful for me. Like, if you can have that effect and get people growing and, in their own sense, feel like they're improving, that powers me, right? So it's having those things that beyond yourself that kind of motivate and push you and feed you. So pretty simple, but pretty powerful, at least for me. And then finally we get down to sort of the nutrition, diet side of it. And that makes a massive difference. One of the big things is like reducing inflammatory foods. And this is going to sound like goofy, but like reducing sugar, reducing tomatoes. Those are all really powerful. Lots of berries, like blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, raspberries, highly anti-inflammatory throughout the body. Then N-acetylcysteine, which basically is a really powerful antioxidant. I find makes a big difference for blood pressure, basically just getting inflammation down throughout the body. Fasting, like intermittent fasting and like even whole day fasting where you go 24 hours without eating and just drinking water. I find, and the scientific literature backs it up, that fasting is really powerful as an anti-inflammatory, right? Because your body is in a burning mode when you're fasting, right? So there's a lot of autophagy going on, which is basically getting rid of old dead cells, burning off junk protein, and that reduces inflammation. And it tends to have like a very positive effect as far as, again, the mental outlook. And then basically North Americans, the majority are deficient in both vitamin D and magnesium. So every day I have 5,000 IUs of vitamin D and 500 milligrams of magnesium biglycinate. And basically it's those two nutrients they're kind of low-hanging fruit, because generally like the population's deficient in them, and because they're both involved in a few hundred chemical processes in the body, you're improving a few hundred things by having adequate levels. So you sleep better, hormone production is better. Like if your testosterone is low, and this goes for both men and women, it's just women have roughly 1/10 the amount that men do. If your testosterone is low, you're going to be depressed. So obviously optimizing, sleep, because your body makes testosterone when you sleep. The nutrients like vitamin D and magnesium are both tied, like adequate levels are tied to adequate testosterone levels. All of these things can play a role, and the strength training tends to up testosterone levels. Like decreasing insulin will tend to up testosterone levels. Like there's all these little benefits sort of that comes in, because the body's a complex unit. So those two nutrients, vitamin D and magnesium, and if it's sort of like an ongoing thing, you're in middle age, and, it's almost like you kind of got late onset depression, lethargy. You find it really hard to have energy, libido. All of that seems to have disappeared. It's a smart thing to go, whether you go to a naturopath doctor and request the blood work, or you go to your family doctor, but getting a full panel hormone screen done of testosterone, free testosterone, DHT, basically luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, estradiol, the sensitive test, because it sort of can be finicky if you just do the generic. You run into the thing getting all of those tested. You may find that you're low in testosterone, right? And after 35, it just sort of steadily goes downhill. And a lot of people, myself included, I'm 51 now. And about a year ago, I started testosterone replacement therapy. So 3 days a week, I do a little shot, and goddamn, what a difference that makes. So again, not making any medical recommendations, but it's the kind of thing to talk to your doctor about. One of the things, don't be surprised though, if you get a dismissive doctor because it's not mainstream yet. There are men's health clinics. And this is a thing that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to women, is women, when they hit menopause, there is hormone replacement therapy, but they tend to only replace progesterone and estrogen. They don't replace testosterone. And so it's one of these things where a lot of like the negative, side effects of menopause get ameliorated by a low dose testosterone. So it's like if you're talking like 10 to 15 milligrams once a week, just a little shot with an insulin syringe so you don't even feel it. You'd be amazed. Basically a number of women I've talked to who've were on sort of the standard hormone replacement, and then they convinced their doctor to add just low dose testosterone once a week. And they were like, holy shit. Because what testosterone does for guys, it does for women, right? Energy, muscle, fat burning, libido, and so it's one of those things where if you don't want to feel old, you have to address your hormones. And if you want to not feel depressed, you have to address your hormones. Or potentially like that, there's a number of causes of depression. And then finally on that front is giving your body the nutrients it needs to make the neurotransmitters serotonin and dopamine. And so twice a day, I do 500 milligrams of the amino acid tyrosine. Twice a day, 200 milligrams of the metabolite of the amino acid tryptophan, the turkey one. Everybody knows it makes you sleepy. And then 50 milligrams of the vitamin B6 metabolite, P5P. It's approximately 5. So P5P. If you look it up on Amazon, you can find P5P, vitamin B6. And that combination basically is what your body needs. Like it makes dopamine out of tyrosine, it makes serotonin out of 5-HTP, and it needs vitamin B6, and then the active metabolite P5P makes it easier. It just removes a processing step in the body, so it's used more efficiently. And then one of the other benefits of the P5P, in addition to helping your body make those neurotransmitters, it suppresses or lower your prolactin levels. And so high prolactin levels tend to lead to low dopamine levels. There's all these inverse relationships within the body. And so by dopamine is the reward, feel good, neurotransmitter. So by having adequate levels of dopamine, because you've given your body what it needs to make it, and keeping the prolactin levels in check, you just kind of feel more like passionate about life. And one of the other side effects, and this is a pleasant side effect, is, you get everything all fixed up, right? And going in the right direction. You'll probably find your libido improves and that type of thing. Well, P5P or anything that lowers your prolactin levels will shorten your refractory period for both men and women, so you're able to go again quicker, which is sort of like a fun, if you want to call it fun, side effect. So that combination, I find, really, basically I'm just making sure my brain has everything it needs, to be fully charged. And that makes quite a difference from a feel standpoint as well. And then, this isn't part of my self thing, but over the years, once I got past that initial stigma of like, why am I broken and why does my brain not work properly, which is probably from all the concussions I've had, it was a thing where I was willing, and this is a thing where you have to be willing to do it, but went to therapy, like talk therapy with a therapist, psychologist. That can do a lot, because they a good therapist helps you understand yourself, frame things, and helps formulate a plan forward, right? And a lot of times it's our own little goofy feedback loops and our things we won't address, because sometimes we don't even know they're there, right? But addressing a lot of those issues, traumas, that type of thing, and processing, and they don't go away, but they're just a thing now, right? They don't have power over you once you work your way through them. And when it comes to working your way through things, it helps to have a professional guide, and that's really what a therapist is. And so I've had not countless, but it seems countless number of appointments over the years, sessions, and for me, it's reached a point where it's manageable. I have got my good days and bad days, but it is a thing where I very rarely don't wake up with a, yee, I love my life, which was not the case many years ago. So, if Catherine was here, she would claim all the credit for making my life wonderful, but, and she gets a lot of credit for that. But you run into the thing of whether it's doctors, sort of immediately writing prescriptions for SSRIs, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressant medication, or basically people just telling you to walk it off or that kind of thing. There's people out there like doctors, psychologists that are there to help you. But think of it this way, you're the only one that knows you. So it really helps to have be your own advocate. Because it's like, you see a massage therapist once every 2 weeks, right? And they're professionals. They're great at what they do, but you got to do some mobility and stretching in between if you want to still stay loose and limber, right? You have to take some like initiative and responsibility in managing your own mental health, and it's not easy, especially when you're sort of at a low point, when the world feels like it's just like closing in an evil, terrible place, and you just want to hide out in a cave somewhere. But think of the doctors and the psychologists and the whatevers as tools that you can use to execute your plan to better mental health.
or that's at least the way that I approach it. So, yeah, this one's sort of, for us, a little bit of a shorter episode, but, you know, the question was, how do I manage depression without medication? And that is, for me, a not very long-winded way of conveying it across. Hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have more questions about it, you can send an email to me, winstonchaos@gmail.com, or go hit the contact on livewildradio.com. And that basically will both come right to us, and I'm happy to elaborate, answer questions, direct you to the resources, like the scientific literature I used to make my progress. But yeah. So for my dear partner, Catherine, who is off at some business conference today, and for me, Winston, I will just say the whole thing, which is, work hard and play dirty, and keep sending your questions in, because these are fun. It's fun to sit down and sort of work through my thoughts and then convey it all out to you guys. So this was episode 79 of Live Wild Radio, and until next time, I bid you adieu.